So, you want to do a custom paint job on a motorcycle, but you're not sure where to start. Or maybe you know what you're doing, but you don't know quite what to charge. Well, stick around. We're going to try to answer some of those questions. What's up, everybody? It's Pac-Man from Drunk Monkey Garage. Today we're going to start working on the custom paint job for my 2010 Harley Davidson Street Glide. I bought this thing a couple of years ago. It's got this beautiful electric blue paint job. I absolutely love the blue, so we're going to keep that as a base. But it's time for a refresh. It's got some scratches and some scuffs and dings. So we're going to refresh that and do something a little custom. If you are a subscriber, you may remember the video where I did the mailbox. This mailbox was pretty much a practice panel for the paint job that I'm going to be doing on the Street Glide. I also did this panel to see whether I wanted to do the metal flake over black or silver, and we ended up going with the silver. So what I'm going to do in this series of videos is a little bit different. What we're going to do is keep track of all of our time that we're putting into this, all of the materials, and all of the shop supplies. This way we can break down how much this paint job is going to cost and get a better idea of what we should quote if we're quoting for a customer's bike. I'm going to be incorporating some custom techniques into this paint job. Nothing too crazy, but there are some techniques that are a little more advanced. So you want to stick around to see those. For the most part, I'm basically starting off with a stock Harley Davidson paint job. This is the factory paint job here. The only thing that's a little bit different is I did some blue metal flake on the lids with a crystal pattern to see how that would look. So what I've done off camera is I've sanded these back down to a point where I can put a sealer over this and repaint them the factory electric blue color. And then we'll start with that and do our custom pattern over that. Other than the lids, everything else is as it was when I took it off of the bike. I didn't go over disassembling the bike. That's a whole different procedure. So this is for you guys who have the customers bring the tins to you to paint and you don't have to mess with disassembling the bike. That puts you in a whole different price range taking a bike apart, because you are responsible for how it comes apart, if anything gets broken while you're taking it apart, and putting it back together properly. So if you're not into that, have the customer do it, or have the customer have somebody else do it, and just bring you the tins. We're going on that premise. We're going to say that the customer brought these tins to me to custom paint, and they want to leave the factory base as the base for the custom paint job. With all that being said, we are going to start with the lids because I do have to get these back to the factory color before I can start on these. So I want to get these back to a factory color and get cured while I'm working on the rest of the parts. So I prepped these lids by sanding these back progressively, starting with the 320 sandpaper. That way I could get all the clear that I covered the pattern with off and get most of the pattern off. I did burn through in a few spots, and that's why I'm going to use the sealer to just make everything an even color to start off with. I'm going to do a sealer And then I'm going to do a silver base and then the electric blue base coat. This should get us back to where we were when this was stock. At this point, getting these back to stock, I'm not going to keep track of the time or materials that I'm using to put into this. Once we get them back to the stock electric blue color, I'll clear coat that just to protect that. And then at that point, we'll start taking detailed notes on how long it's taken and what materials we're using. It's a little warmer today, so I was able to get the booth up to 73 degrees so far. The parts are right at 73 degrees also. That one's at 76. So we should be good to go as far as temperature is concerned. What I did was I put a kerosene heater in here for a while. The temperature, the ambient temperature outside is much higher than it has been lately. I haven't been able to paint because of the low temps outside. I was only able to get the booth up to about 50 degrees, which is not optimal. So I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back in the booth, and let's get started. I'm using a MP170 epoxy primer. It's from PPG. It's their Omni line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix that up. It's a 2-to-1. I'm going to mix it up and reduce it by 10% per their instructions to use it as a sealer. So I'm using an Aero Pro A610. It's got a 1.5 tip. That's what I'm using for my prime gun now. I've got the fan wide open. I've got the fluid nozzle out 2 turns from closed. Laid down a nice coat of primer sealer on these parts. They're looking good. We're going to wait about 15 minutes for those to flash off, and then we'll lay down another coat. One thing about painting in cooler weather is that exhaust fan is going to suck the heat right out of that booth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that about 10 minutes to flash off, and then I'm going to put the heater back in the booth, get the temp back up, and turn the fan off, and let that second coat cure for about 30 minutes. Then we'll be ready to lay down our silver base. Okay, so I've got the lids repainted. They look good. The color match is spot on. So the only thing I've got left to do with these lids is it did get a little bit of orange peel when I did the clear. So we're gonna sand that down, get that nice and smooth so we can put the graphics on it. Other than that, we are at a point where we are going to start recording our times and keeping track of all the materials and shop supplies that we use. That way we can get a good estimate on what this paint job actually costs. I did some research, and the area that you're in kind of dictates what you can charge, along with your experience and people knowing you. If more people know your paint jobs, you can charge more. If you're just getting started, you're going to want to charge less, but not undersell yourself. If you're in an area where custom paint jobs aren't as prevalent, then you may not be able to charge top dollar for your paint jobs. If you're in an area where a lot of people are wanting custom paint jobs, then if you're good at it, you can charge more. So with that being said, we're just going to keep track of the actual costs and hours, and the only variable will be what you charge per hour for your labor. I'm not going to include the wet sanding and getting the lids smooth for the graphics, because this was a unique situation where I already had graphics on here and I needed to cover those up before I started the new graphics. So I won't include that, but as far as everything else, all these panels have just been taken off of the motorcycle. So we're going to start from scratch. These have, years of wax on them and stuff like that, so we're going to have to give them a good cleaning. I'll show you what I go through to do that. This isn't a tutorial as much as a look into what it takes time-wise, material-wise, and shop supply-wise to do a custom paint job on a full bagger. When I'm doing a custom paint job, I usually start with the front fender, but on this bike, I'm going to start with the fairing because it's the most prevalent part on the bike, and I want to get my pattern laid out on this to kind of dictate what the rest of the bike is going to look like. I did do an AI rendering of kind of what I want to do with the bike. It's not going to be exactly like this, but that is an idea of what I'm going for. So that being said, we're going to get started. The fairing has a few nicks and scratches in it, but it looks like most of these are going to be in an area where I'm going to be doing the graphics anyway. So all I need to do is sand those, feather them out a little bit by sanding them, and I'm not going to have to repaint the fairing with the base coat. The other thing that helps is we got a good color match with the lids, so I don't have to repaint the base coat on the whole bike. If that color was off, I would probably have to redo the base on the whole bike. That way everything would match. But this is a good color match. I'm happy with it. So we're going to get started on the fairing today. What I'm going to do is get this cleaned up really good. So I downloaded a free time clock app on my tablet here. What we're going to do is every time I start working on this project, I'm going to punch in and keep track of my hours. That way I don't have to write them down or anything like that. And at the end, we can see how many total hours we have into this project. I'm not going to include the video segments where I'm explaining things to you or setting up shots and stuff like that. I'm only going to record my times when I'm actually working on the project. So I'm going to clock in on this project, and we are going to start cleaning this fairing with some simple green to get all the road tar and bugs and all that stuff off. And then we'll move to a degreaser, and then we'll rinse everything with H2O with dish soap in it. And then we'll finally finish cleaning it with a waterborne glass cleaner. So I just punched in. We're going to get started cleaning this fairing. So I'm paying extra attention to these little spots where the tar comes up off of the highway and hits the fairing. I want to get all those little spots off because they are petroleum based. It's just little tar specks that come up off of the paved highways. But they will affect your paint, so you want to make sure you get those out. You don't want to sand those into the paint when we scuff this for the graphics. Just want to make sure we get all those off. Make sure we get any bug guts off and stuff like that. So we're going to clean this really good. Prepare it for scuffing. So I got a few stubborn tar spots. What I'm going to start with is kind of it's a microfiber mesh cloth. It's a little more aggressive than just the microfiber. So we're going to try that first. If that doesn't work, we're going to go to a clay bar and just use the soapy water to lubricate that. So these aren't really showing up on camera real well, but there's a few spots. I can feel them. There. It's just little tar spots. So we're going to try to clean that. And this does not look like it's getting it off. So we're going to switch over to water and soapy water in the clay bar. Clay bars usually do a really good job of getting imperfections out of the paint, as long as they're not too deep. You want to keep this well lubricated so it doesn't scratch your paint. But we are going to scuff this up anyway, so in this application it doesn't really matter. This is doing a really good job of getting those tar spots off. That's better than that paint's looked in quite a few years. So at this point, all I'm going to do is spray this down with a little bit of water with a few drops of dish soap in it, just to get that simple green off of there. So we're done with that. We don't want to contaminate it with any of the old rags, so we'll grab a new rag. Wash all that simple green off. Now you saw me cleaning the underside, and the only reason I really do that is if there's any dirt and stuff in here when I'm spraying, it could knock loose and get into my paint. So I want to make sure I got that cleaned real good too. So same thing, we're gonna Just spray that with some soapy water. Get all that simple green out of there. So we don't want that reacting with the paint. So our next step is a degreaser. We're going to degrease it and get any of the leftover simple green and any of the leftover grease that's in there off of it. Now our last step before we scuff this panel is a waterborne glass cleaner. And this will just get any of the degreaser residue right off of it. And that's it for the panel preparation part of it. We just need to scuff it down now and we can start laying down our graphics. So we're at the point we're going to scuff this down. We're going to use an air orbital, dual action orbital sander. I have an interface pad here, which is just a foam pad to give it some flex. And I have a red Scotch-Brite pad to put on this. We're going to keep this nice and wet with some water with a little bit of dish soap in it. And all we're going to do is get this scuffed down so that when I tape off and paint the graphics, everything will stick. This clear coat is a little faded, a little worn, so I'm going to go real gentle on this because I don't want to burn through it to the color. And I have to repaint this. Once we scuff it down and tape off our graphics, when we do our final clear, it should freshen all of this blue up. So, not too worried about that. So, I'm going to put this on hyperlapse, clock back into my time clock, and we'll get to it. So what we're looking for here is a nice, even, dull finish. We've got some shiny spots still, like in the creases here and down in here. We're gonna have to hit those with a hand Scotch-Brite pad because the dual action sander just isn't small enough to get into those little spots, like right in here. Some shiny in there. What you want is very similar to Harley Davidson's denim finish. That'll give you a good adhesion for the next layers and the tape that we're going to be putting on it. So I'm going to finish this up. I'll put you back on hyperlapse and we'll look at it when it's done. All right, we're looking really good. We've got a nice, even, dull finish on this. A lot of the nicks and stuff actually came out. There's a couple of deeper ones, but those will be covered up with the graphics, so we don't have to worry about those. One important thing when you're doing this is you want to watch your sanding residue while you're using the DA sander with the Scotch-Brite pad, because as long as it's white As long as that it looks like a milky white residue coming off of it, you're just sanding clear. If you start getting the color of the part in your sanding residue, that means you're going through into the color, and the color's not thick, so it's gonna burn through pretty quickly if you get to that. So you want to try to avoid that and just scuff up the clear, especially if you're not changing colors or repairing the color. So we've got a good starting point here. I think we're going to end this video at this point and pick up when I go to tape the graphics off on this. So far, we've got the fairing cleaned and scuffed down and ready for graphics. I did keep a log of the time that I was spending doing this. That came up to 1 hour. And everything I've used today, the degreaser, the simple green, the scuff pad, and the glass cleaner, as well as the microfiber cloths, those are all considered consumables and should be added into your hourly shop rate, which is basically your labor rate plus your consumable materials. Since this is my own project, I set an example shop rate of $80. For some of you, this may be a little high. For a lot of you, this may be really low. But this is my project, so I'm not really charging myself for it. I just want to keep track of the hours I have into it. Like I said, where you are geographically and what kind of market you're in is going to dictate what your shop rate's going to be. So you have to just figure that out on your own. And if you're too high, you're not going to get any business. If you're too low, you're going to be swamped with business, and you're going to have to think about setting your shop rates a little bit higher. So that all being said, I have 1 hour into it today, scuffing and prepping and cleaning the panel for taping off the graphics. So I would have charged the customer $80 for today. The other thing is the design process. The time you spend designing the layout and paint scheme for the project, that's not free time. You are, you may be on your phone doing it while you're watching TV or something, but it's taken away from other things you could be doing. So you need to make sure you charge for the design process, and you want to stay in good contact with the customer during that process so they are happy with what they get. My design has been a culmination of ideas that I've had over the past year. Like I said, this is for myself, so I can't really incorporate that into the price. Ideas would come to me and I would work on them in between stuff. So what I've come up with now, just using AI to do the rendering took me about 2 hours. Going back and forth with AI to refine the process and stuff. But you want to incorporate that into your pricing. You don't want to give your ideas and creativity away for free. So I hope you guys will stick around and watch this project unfold over the next few videos. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, and hit that bell icon for notifications of future videos. And as always, until next time, cheers.